This is Jeff Slobotski here with
Shonna Dorsey and
Nancy Williams.
Awesome. Nancy, it's
Welcome.
so great to have you with us. How are you doing with this pandemic situation? We'll just kick it off with that and go from there.
Oh, okay. So there's so many perspectives because we all have these intersectional lives. So on a personal perspective, it's been, I think, 8 weeks since we've been working virtually, and it set in that, what a pandemic is and what that means to life. The first couple of weeks, it was hard to sleep. And now I think I've accepted that almost every day is the same unless I leave the house. And after I leave the house, it's like, oh, I don't really like it out here because it's too much cleaning that has to happen. It's sanitizing wipes and the sanitizer and going shopping and all of that. And I'm always excited about shopping when I'm shopping until I get home and it's like, damn it, now I gotta wash all of these things. And then I realize how much plastic we use, and that's all of the packaging. It's like, okay, so that's another issue that we need to address during this. And so it's like a rabbit hole mashup with Groundhog Day is what this feels like personally. And then for work is having to pivot from what we had planned to do for our programming out for the next few months to where we are now is trying to be responsive to the community needs. And so we closed offices and started working virtually on March 13th. On March 30th, we kicked off our first set of meals for a program called Feeding Our Neighbors, where we provide emergency food relief of prepared meals that are single served and packaged. They're made from scratch with local food from local farmers and is distributed to the community. So we started out with like 250 that first week. And now we are at about 1,300 meals per week. And I think this week we will hit either 5,500 or 6,000 meals since March 30th.
Wow.
It's this dynamic of trying to keep things going, trying to make sure people are okay within your staff, and then trying to make sure that you're serving the community in a way that is relevant, and then also trying to take care of yourself. So side note, I had extra pounds before COVID-19 hit, and now that they've gone on, let's just say I need a whole new regimen and a kick-ass trainer at this point.
That is well summarized. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like, yeah. No, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, kudos to you guys. I mean, I knew of the amazing work you guys were doing pre-COVID, right? But would you say 6,000, close to 6,000 meals now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, I mean, again, I try to wrap my head around this deal instead of punting it, hey, another 2 weeks or another 30 days. It's like, I think the best part is to look at perpetuity, to say, hey, this is how it's going to be. We don't know when the end will be. Let's plan and act and, function on that mindset rather than be like, oh, 2 more weeks and life's going to be back to normal. Yeah.
Right. I think about that too. And Nancy, I'll follow up with you on this, but it's an adjustment, right? Because we're not going to go back to anything, I don't think, anytime soon. It's more like you said, Jeff, what's our next step? Not how do we get it back to the good old days? So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and we can't go back to the good old days because it wasn't good old days for everybody. And nothing else, if we don't get this message from this global engagement of learning that we are in this together and then we rise and fall together, is that we have to do better for each other and with each other. We cannot. There's not enough support in this system to help people live life the way that they should. There's no way that within 2 weeks of things shutting down that we go from people being able to have quote unquote normal lives to miles long lines at food banks throughout the country.
Exactly.
farmers tossing food because the distribution channels are disrupted and they can't get food from one place to the other. When people are hungry, it's just the insanity of it is beyond what many people thought we were in. But now we see it. We cannot just look away from it and act like that once everybody goes back to work, it goes back to normal. It should not, because that should not be our normal. We have to do the things that make this different, because we should be more resilient than this.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I completely agree. Nancy, yeah, I know this, are there other kind of people, organizations, like things that you're getting your inspiration from? And maybe inspiration's the wrong word, but just fuel to keep going, right? Like where are you finding that? It could be music, it could be organizations, it could be individuals. Yeah, because you're such a strong leader and a strong component to our community. But yeah, what makes you tick? Kind of what's getting you through these times?
That's heavy, Jeff, because I feel like I'm in it with everybody else. I'm learning. The one thing that I will say that this has forced me to do, because I thought I was on this journey for self-awareness and enlightenment, but really had to take a hard look at me. And when things shifted and some things got harder and it didn't make sense why they got harder, I had to look at what was I bringing to this that made it that way. And then I discovered there's a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't dealt with that I have to deal with. And my response or my reaction to that stuff makes a difference with the people that I serve with. And so if I'm having an issue with someone that I wouldn't normally have an issue with, then I had to take a look at me. And once I've talked to my coach, had a therapy session, and then realized, oh, that's the stuff that I have to deal with, I try to bring that presence when I am with people to go, okay, I'm moving into that space again. I need to step back and claim this part that is my stuff and not put this baggage on them to carry because it's not theirs. And part of my accountability is helping other people see that for themselves. Like, I can't carry your stuff because I got enough of my own. And if you need some support, I can guide you to some places and resources that can help you. But I'm learning to find joy in the simplest of things. Like just before we started this today, I'm not a morning person. I would rather stay up until 5 in the morning instead of get up at 5 in the morning. So I was up late again and had a 9 o'clock call. So I didn't get a chance to do breakfast, but I had like 30 minutes in between the last call and this call, and I made breakfast and it was awesome. And I can still see part of it, but it's like farm eggs and some sausage and all of that. And it's relishing in those small things of me feeding myself and nourishing myself and appreciating what it took for that to get to me. There are flowers. I have flowers in my house because Dominique Morgan dropped off flowers for Mother's Day. And so I have an orchid that I get to look at every day. My daughter brought some alcohol in, lots of alcohol.
Bourbon or whiskey or?
Honey, I got Tito's vodka and bourbon and Bullet bourbon, but I already had a tiny baby Jesus size bottle of Bullet rye on the shelf from Costco already. So I'm letting that sit to the side, but I've been making simple syrups and making mocktails and cocktails. Sometimes it's just looking at the sky. I know it's a good day when I think the clouds are awesome. And when they are not awesome, then I have to check myself of what is it that I'm letting get in the way of the joy. But music has been on point. I've been listening to Cecily. What is Savant? I think it's her last name. She's a jazz singer. I got a chance to sit in on a Facebook Live with Girl Trek that had Angela Davis and Nikki Giovanni. on the same one. That was life-giving. So many things, just so many things. But I'm just trying to appreciate humanity and people and being in the present, doing as much as I can for right now in my capacity, and not overwhelming myself if I feel like I can't get to it all. Learning from yesterday because I can't change it, and then letting tomorrow take care of itself, because if I'm doing what I need to do right now, then tomorrow should be fine.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like there's this sense of a forced pause, and I think that's really incredible for people like me, you, and Jeff, who get pulled in a lot of different directions in community and also love to serve. It's kind of a tricky thing because it'd be different if we were like the handoff guys, but we're not. I mean, we will when it makes sense, but we also love to just take things on. So, but it's like there is beauty in this moment, as challenging as it is. So I appreciate that for sure. So Nancy, tell us about No More Empty Pots. I know that it's been quite a journey. I remember being in an Omaha Venture Group meeting a few months ago, hearing about one of the initial really small grants that you did. And now you're a $1 million+ revenue generating organization. So can you tell us more about the journey, kind of where you're and where you're heading with that?
Oh boy. So this started in 2009, August of 2009. A friend of mine and I took a couple of days off work and were brainstorming about what was needed in the community, what was possible in the community, what were the resources, and where we are right now. And we compiled that and started sharing with people. And it was suggested that we bring a group of people together to talk about it. And so in February of 2010, we had a food summit at Family Housing Advisory Service at 24th and Lake, and about 50 people showed up. And we had a day-long conversation about what we found, and we had other people come in and give their perspectives. There was Sharon and Beth from Menalusa House and Menalusa neighborhood. I've lived in Menalusa neighborhood for 21 years now, raised kids here, so that's my home. And they were there talking about what they were doing with Menalusa House. Edgar Hicks was there talking about husbandry and agriculture and getting kids more involved in STEM related to food production. There were people from across the city in different roles that just showed up. The cost for the day was $20, and we got, and if you don't know me, I'm gonna say this now, everything that I talk about that I remember in great detail is associated with food. If there was not any food, chances are I will not remember it. So I'm sorry, but I remember this because it's about food. And so I remember that we had soup and snacks and stuff that day. But after that, there were everybody who was involved in it was interested in continuing that conversation. So for the next few months, we met at libraries and other ED offices and things like that, trying to figure out, okay, this is what we see, this is how we want to engage. And that led to us having a second summit in November of 2010 at Metropolitan Community College at the new culinary arts building. Jim Trebian was a huge champion for us. And we were still not trying to be an organization. What we were trying to do is map what was happening, where the gaps were, how people could work more together so that we could maximize the resources available, so that we could start to make some of these steps that we needed towards self-sufficiency, so that we wouldn't have what we're seeing right now when the day-to-day is disrupted. Within a couple of weeks, everything falls apart. And we knew that was an issue, but we knew that this is a systems issue that's much bigger than any one organization or person. And it's going to take all of us to do this work. And so we had that meeting. It was very evident then, because it was a day and a half long and about 120 people showed up to this one, that there was something more there. with traction. And we then decided to go ahead and apply for our 501c3 because we needed to have more capacity than what we were being asked to do. We didn't have that in place. So we applied in November, and by December 10th, we had gotten the letter from the IRS. It took 6 weeks to get that done. And we were prepared for like a 6-month wait, but it came in. And so then we got started to work. We had a really great champion, and still do, in Nancy Mammal with Mammal Foundation, that gave early gifts so that we could focus on that work instead of trying to fundraise, and while we figure out what we needed to do and how. And we took 3 years to map out what was happening, what was needed, and what would be that vehicle to help us facilitate what needed to happen. What we settled on was a food hub where we could have a commercial kitchen, support urban agriculture, support food entrepreneurs, do educational activities, all in one place. As we are learning that it is a pretty responsive tool with the pandemic and having to pivot and change courses on what we were doing from day to day, we were able to turn it from 4 programs running in-house under one roof to being emergency food relief, where we are sourcing, preparing, packaging, and distributing with several different partners to supply food to people in Nebraska and Iowa. And this has been a really long journey. I started out, I'm one of the co-founders, but I've been a volunteer up until 2016. So I just started working for the organization as a paid employee in January of 2016. And that's when I started as a CEO. Our budget the first year was $20,000. Our budget that was approved by the board for 2020 is 1.3 million. And I just finished reviewing financials last night. So it looks like with our spending, the way it is, that we'll end up at about 1.1 million in expenditures this year, but we've been in the million plus for revenue for the past 3 years, since 2016, so 4 years now.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
I think one of the things that I really appreciate about you, and I think about entrepreneurship, which you are an entrepreneur, and then I think about my fellow cohort of scrappy entrepreneurs. Just like to kind of like get after it. It's like, we see a problem, let's like execute, right? And you do that for sure, but you're also more very strategic. I won't say more strategic, everybody has their own approach, but very strategic. And so what advice would you give to up and coming entrepreneurs who are thinking, all right, there's a problem that's very clear to me, I can see some opportunities to tackle it, but looking at more of the long game?
Yeah, I would say first look at yourself and what you're bringing to this and why you want to do it. The why is so important, because this is one of the hardest things I've ever done. I have 4 adult kids who are thriving. Some of that is due to our parenting, but a lot of it is due to their ability to navigate life and having some supports on the front end. And that sometimes feels a lot like what this work is in the organization. It's like parenting on a whole nother level, because there's only so much influence you have. And you have to really put yourself in a position where you have to know who you are unequivocally, because that is the thing that you have to stand on when you are doing this work. And it's for any startup stuff. I believe that is for any work that you do, but especially for a nonprofit where it took us 3 years before we had more than 6 people who understood what we were doing, what we were trying to do. It's been a long road of explaining this. And it's like, you know, trust me when you see, understand. And it took us 9 years to actually finish this building. We just finished renovation in June 2019, and we were under active construction from January 2016 until June. We just finished the 1-year punch list last Friday. So it's a long road. You have to be ready for detractors. You have to be ready to not defend your position, because it's not about being defensive. It's about knowing what you stand for and making sure that that's what you're working towards. This is not about you, but you have to know what you are bringing to it. It is about the service that you are giving. And that's one of the things that we try to make sure that when we are hiring for people, that they understand, yes, you may have a heart for this work and you love food and you love people, but this is not that. You know, you should probably volunteer, because that's not what's going to happen. There's a high level of accountability. There's a high level of ambiguity. When I'm tracking what we've done over the past 3 years, we pivot about every 90 days. That's whiplash for some folks. They cannot handle it. So we actually have in our profile for people that we're looking to hire that they are not the people that are looking for things to stay the same. Because what we found is for people who want that, they don't survive in this organization. Right. And we're not trying to churn through people that way. We're trying to create a space where folks who thrive on that have a place where they can do that. But the biggest thing is know your values, know what you stand for, be able to justify it, and be willing to put in the work, because there will be many times where you will doubt whether it's the right thing to do. But if you can go back to your why, and if that still holds, you will figure out how to keep moving forward.
That's good. That's good. Nancy, I'm grateful to know you, and yeah, live in a city with you, being a part of trying to change things and change systems for sure. It's encouraging in light of this, everything that we're kind of going through right now, knowing that you're in the journey too is exciting. For folks that want to find you and the work online, website, Twitter, Instagram, where can folks find more out about No More Empty Pots and you?
Well, the website is nmepomaha.org. Okay. And if you use any search engine, put in No More Empty Pots, you can find it. There's a story about the domain name that we can talk about some of. I have stories for every part of this journey over the past 10 years.
That's awesome.
Yes, we are on Twitter, is No More MT Pots. Okay. So, and then there's Instagram that I think is the same, but I don't manage social media anymore.
No, you're fine.
And we'll link, find it.
We'll link all these fun things up as well in the show notes for sure. But yeah, no, Nancy, thanks so much for taking time with us today. And yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate it. I think just one final closing thought, Nancy, and this is going to be all sappy, but you are like, Nancy has, I think, served as a really strong mentor and guide for a lot of my peers. And so just know that a lot of people appreciate you. And I know that I'm very grateful for you. I met Nancy at the beginning of my startup journey, and I was like, what am I even doing? And so a lot of the things that you've said today, even though we're in completely different spaces, resonate with me. So I really appreciate you and all that you do for our community, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. And you too, Jeff. It takes all of us, and you two are certainly inspirations in this community, not just for me, but for a lot of people. So keep up what you're doing. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you showing gratitude and grace towards other folks who are on this leadership journey. And it is a journey because it never stops.
It never stops. That's true.
Well said. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll look forward to talking here more soon. So yeah.
Yeah.